Hey guys, it's Spiffy Guy, and I'm back with another gear video. This time we're talking about the wood gasifier. This is a new stove that I've just made, and it burns wood. It's supposed to be super efficient, and we're going to go ahead and build one, so stick around. Alright, so we're going to build this wood gas stove here, and we're going to need a few things. I'm going to go ahead and build it out of some paint cans. This is a 1 quart paint can with a lid. The lid's going to be important. And this is a pint paint can. Now, I had a problem finding these at Lowe's and Home Depot and Ace Hardware. I ended up having to order one of these from a paint store, like Porter Paint or Glidden Paint. It was only like $1.20 or something like that. It is lined, as is the quart paint can as well. So we're gonna have to burn that off. So with our first burn, we just want to make sure we're not cooking on it, so we can burn off that lining. We're also gonna need some sort of tin snip so we can cut this stuff. Dremel will work all right, and we're gonna need a drill bit, and a pop rivet gun. You could probably get away with not using a pop rivet gun if you had some maybe some small screws and nuts and bolts, essentially. You could probably use some small wood screws or self-tapping screws, and we'll talk about that later. A little marking implement, a little pen, and important, your safety goggles. Especially if you're using like cutoff wheel for a Dremel or something like that, you're gonna want your safety goggles. So let me show you what we're doing first. Alright, so the first thing to note is that the paint cans themselves, we're actually going to be having the opening is going to be at the bottom, okay? And what's going to happen is this paint can is eventually going to go inside of this paint can on the top. As you can see, I kind of marked off a circle here. I was drawing and being silly. But we want to make sure that the circle that we draw on there, we're going to cut out. We're going to cut out that circle and stick that paint can in there. We want to make sure it is the diameter of the body and not the rim. We want it to fit really snug in there. So remember, you can always take away more material if you need to, but you can't add it back. So make it nice and tight. But the first thing I did is I went up here about 1 inch, and I made some marks here about every 1.5 inches, every 2 inches or whatever. These are going to be our bottom holes. This is where the air is going to come in that we're going to heat. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and drill those out. Alright, so I've drilled my holes here. This one's a little off, but that's alright. You know, I added that one at the end. What I did was I used a step bit on this because drilling in aluminum is kind of a pain because it flexes, and a regular drill bit will chew it up. So I opted to buy a step bit for like $6 from Harbor Freight, and you know, it's the first time I've ever used one, and it was pretty fantastic on it. Made it really easy, and nice clean holes that aren't chewed up too bad on the inside. I did these as 1/2 inch, and I put a piece of tape on the step bit just above the 1/2 inch mark, just so I had a kind of a marker as to how far I needed to go on the step bit. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out this back piece right here so we can fit our can in there. So I'm going to do that next. Alright, so I cut this part out, and for the most part it's fairly tight. I used a pair of pliers and kind of crimped it a little bit so it slopes down, so when I stick the other can in there, it'll you know, be a real nice tight seal, and we'll have to kind of jockey with it a little bit. Alright, so we're pretty much kind of done with this can for right now. Next we're going to look at the pint paint can. Now this is made out of aluminum, and I've made these before with a steel can, so I'm not sure how the aluminum is going to hold up as far as the you know, be in the burn chamber, if it'll melt. Who knows? But it's a good experiment. So if you can't find paint cans, you can always go ahead and use a small soup can that would fit into the quart paint can. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom off. I used a Dremel cut-off wheel, and I cut right along the base of the bottom. Now remember that this, which is the part where the lid goes, is actually going to go down and be our bottom. We're going to end up putting a grate right in there, so that's going to be the bottom. So we're talking about the top, or the bottom here when we want to cut this off. That's going to become our top. So just run your Dremel cutoff wheel right along right here. You could use tin snips, whatever you have, and you're going to end up with something kind of like this. Now be careful, the edges might be a little sharp. Now, what we're going to do is, and you may want to do this before you cut off, but I measured down and drew a ring all the way around a 1/2 inch. And these are going to become flanges. We're going to end up cutting these like every, 1/2 inch, and they're going to fold back over. And when we set our can in here, they're going to fold over and rest on this ridge, and then we'll pop rivet some of them in to hold them in place. Okay? But we need to make our holes in here. So I went down a 1/2 inch. That's going to be my fold line. I went down another 1/2 inch. That's going to be where I'm going to drill my holes. These are where the gas is going to come out. Now I'm going to do a little bit more holes on this one than I did on that one, but I'm going to make my holes slightly smaller. There's a lot of talk about the ratio of air volume that can come through, these holes versus this hole, and you want like a 3 to 1 ratio and a 4 to 1 ratio, and there's primary holes and secondary holes, and honestly I don't know which is which. But I'm going to put a lot of smaller holes in this one to give me kind of a nice little Bunsen burner gas thing going on. So I'll probably do maybe 1/4 inch, and we'll see how it goes, because I have a lot of them here, and I space these pretty much 3/4 of an inch apart, and we'll go all the way around. So you may want to drill your holes before you cut the top off, but let's go drill those holes. Alright, so here's the pint can. I got my row of holes. I went 5/16, so just a little bit bigger than 1/4. I think that'll work out well. And I was just thinking about this, and if you were to do this yourselves, I would probably not cut your top off yet. I would drill your holes first, because we're going to shove this can down here. So I would drill your holes first, and that way you're not trying to push and work with a nice raw metal edge. So I would drill the holes, I would push it in till it's about right here or whatever, and then cut your top off and cut your flanges, and then finish seating, because you'll be able to pull from the inside and grab hold of this nice metal here that is not sharp and going to cut your fingers off. So I'm going to end up basically shoving this down in there until we get close, and then I'll cut my flanges. Alright, so you can see here that I've gone ahead and situated the small can into the large can. I cut these 3/4 inches, and then folded them down, and I got it in there nice and tight. And I went ahead and adjusted all these so they fit all nice and flush. And so now what we need to do is we need to secure the small can to the big can, and to do that we're going to use pop rivets. We'll drill 1/8 inch holes on a few of these on the corners, not too many. We don't need a whole ton of them. And we'll just secure that down, and then we'll clean up any burrs that might be on the holes, or any of these little lips or flanges. If they stick up a little bit, we can kind of adjust them, and that way it's nice and flat, and we don't have to worry about it catching gear or anything. Okay, dead simple. I use 3, you could use 4, you could use how many ever you want. I don't think these flanges are going to come up, but if they're a problem, you could probably pry them up with a screwdriver and trim them back if you needed to. So the next thing we got to do is we just need to put a grate in here. We're going to use hardware cloth for that. We're just going to cut it, and I'll show you what it looks like once we get it cut. Alright, so here's the hardware cloth. This is a 1/2 inch hardware cloth, and just to give you an idea, I went basically 6 across, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 in a square. I clipped the corners, kind of bent it in, and what I'm doing is I'm basically just kind of shoving it down in there, and then coming from the underneath, and then you can pull it in. But basically we just need a fire grate down there, that's all. So whatever you got might work. I like hardware cloth. It's pretty light and it's pretty strong. Just kind of shove it down in there, and then I kind of push it into place, and it kind of rounds out on the edges there and fits a little bit better. I'm sure once we put some heat on it, the idea is to get it wedged in there that it's not going to fall out. So once you got that in there, you'll just need to figure out what you're going to use for a pot holder / windscreen. You can get like a tuna can or something like that you can flip over and slide in there, so flange out the bottom. I have some aluminum flashing I might mess with here in a minute, and maybe I might just use some hardware cloth. I have a whole roll of it, and just make a little pot stand on there. So the next thing to do will be to burn it out, get this lining out and see if it wood gases. Now, I just want to also point out that when you run this, you want to put your lid on the bottom, okay? That's going to act as an ash catch. It's also going to seal the bottom and make sure that your air is coming in through your holes up there and you're not getting too much air through the bottom. And it will also keep you from putting a scorch ring on the ground. If you're burning, it can get hot down there and you don't want to basically scorch out the grasses. That's kind of one of the reasons why these are nice, is because they're kind of a contained fireplace for you. Alright, so I loaded up the stove and I had one large stick and one small one. They fell off a tree and that was it. I got the big ones in the bottom and then I kind of went up from there. I put the windscreen on because it's a little windy, and then I covered the windscreen with shavings, so should get the fire going. So I'm going to use some of these UCO matches and see if we can't light up this tin. Okay, so we're just going to let the tinder burn down and hopefully light up some of the wood, maybe a little wet, and then we'll see if it starts gasifying. Now you can see what I did on the windscreen here. This is pretty much just kind of like the little Caldera clones that I make. It's just slightly curved at the bottom, and I used some manila envelope just to kind of get the template. Then I just did some bend here, and then this will actually crunch up on itself and fit right inside the stove for transport. So we're still burning right here. I don't know if it's gasifying yet or not. Down here in the corner there might be a little flame coming out of there, out of the holes. We'll let it burn down a little bit and see what it looks like. Now these are just 5/16 holes, and I just did them all the way around here. It's sort of just to let a little air in there. I may need to add some more holes or open them up a little bit once I put the pot on there if I find that it's not having enough output as far as air coming out. But there's hardly any smoke coming off of this, and this is maple that I'm burning right here. And as I mentioned, this is just a stick that I found in the ground. There's another one over there, another one over there. So on this back side here, it kind of looks like it's trying to gasify. I don't necessarily know if it is or not. And we've been burning now for about 8 minutes on that full load, and doesn't seem like it's going to be going out. So we'll let it burn and see how long it takes. And here we are, just over 15 minutes. There's still heat coming off, but not a whole lot of flame. We'll let it burn a little bit more and see how far it goes down. Now you have to keep in mind that this pint can that we put in there doesn't really have that large of a burn chamber. I don't know if the Bush Buddy or the Solo Pot or one of those other ones has a bigger burn chamber, but this is pretty small, honestly. It seems to be burning fairly efficient. That looks like a lot of ash right there. And you can see the side has gotten quite a bit discolored. So we'll have to see how that burn chamber in there looks once it's done. Alright, so the ashes are completely out. Probably took about 30 minutes or so. I loosened the bottom, and you can see it's going to blow away here, but that's all we got left. That's just that's all the loose ash that was at the bottom, and that's what flipping it over and using the lid of the quart paint can is kind of nice, because now you have a way to get the ashes and you don't have to shake it out through the top. Alright guys, so that's how you build the wood gasifier stove. Came in at just a hair over 6 ounces, so not too bad compared to some of the commercial stoves like the Bush Buddy, which has an advertised weight of 5 ounces. Whether it's efficient or not, I don't know. I don't know how it would compare to you know, other wood burners like the Bush Buddy stove, the Solo stove, their other gasifier stoves, or even just the regular wood burners like the Emberlit or the Firefly stove. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about that, and go ahead and post some comments below if you have any thoughts on that, or check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/SpiffyGuyAdventures, and we'll be taking this out on some more adventures and see how it performs, and whether we need to put more holes in this little pot stand / windscreen. So until the next video, you guys go out and have yourself your own adventure.